Okay, so Johan works in Motorola for quite a lot of times, and he participated in Agile transformations. He held several roles throughout those years, and right now he's coaching teams to improve continuously, and he's well known for his sense of humor. Today he will present you the concept of leading Agile transformation as a product owner. Please give warm welcome to Johan Raffin.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me fine? Right. Welcome. I am very happy to see so many people, especially on the last presentation of the day. So you guys got a lot of courage to sit there for about 60 slides, 30 minutes. I'm kidding. I can see your face. Now, I will try to make this a little bit more entertaining and fun. I'll keep it lightweight. And then after the presentation, I'll still be here if you have questions. I want to talk about it. I'm a little bit relieved about making this presentation now after I was a little bit worried at the beginning when I saw Ari's presentation and Mihal's presentation and Asha's presentation. I was really hoping nothing in my slides would contradict what they're talking about, the good things and not. So today I'm going to go with something a little bit different. I've done several scaled Agile transformations, some successful, some we're still waiting to see how they're going, but they're looking pretty good. I'm saying that because my leadership is in the room now, so I feel like this is a job interview. But I'll talk about them. I'll talk about this transformation that we're doing. I'll use that as an example to go over my perspective on really trying to drive this transformation more like a product owner. So I had a problem. Actually, I moved into, it was not a problem. I moved into a new team recently, about 6-7 months ago. Quick tidbits, when your senior leadership comes and tells you and say, would you like to move to this team? We could really use you. And you say, no, thank you. The second time they ask you, will be moved there. So just take it the first time. It makes it a little bit easier. I moved into this job, and I started looking at what we had to do, and it was quite a lot of work that needed to be done for a scaled Agile transformation. So this was not just transforming different small teams into Agile teams. This was actually going into a full-fledged scale Agile transformation for a digital transformation team within the IT department. So we all looked at the problem and the challenge really at this point. It was we're trying to do two things once. We're getting a lot more demand, so we're trying to scale. We need to scale fast. The other part of it is that we also need to be a lot more predictable about our deliveries. So at the end of the day, we're delivering 50% of what we commit to do 100% of the time. So this was good in terms of predictability, but not what our leadership was looking for. But my role, I came in and I started to look at how can we drive this digital transformation from a scaled Agile perspective. So the good part is at this point, I had the problem. And then I was also told we're going to be using feature teams. It was a good idea. We said, let's face it, for what we needed to do was great. So I said, this is really good. I already have the problem, the solution. So I said, sweet, we're almost there. This is going to be easy going. So what did we do? We just decided to bring in an army. I put the Navy here because I couldn't find something less, I would say, military. But I wanted to paint a picture about what did we do. And right now I'm going to talk to you about how did we manage to get this digital transformation going. So what we did is really, we built a 9-month plan. So we brought in a lot of people. We sat there, we say, here's what we're going to do, how are we going to do it. So we wrote out every steps that we had to do with very specific purposes, roles, responsibilities. We also hired a lot of consultants, top-notch consultants out there. We actually made sure that they were at least Scrum Master certified to make sure that they would be able to guide us into this transformation. We did rename a lot of the roles and the tracks to make sure that they would actually fit nicely into the Agile framework that we're looking for. So that was going to help us into doing this transformation. We also decided to reduce the number of ceremonies. We felt that it wasn't needed to have all of those ceremonies as part of the Agile transformation. So we kept only the one that we cared about. And we stayed with the actual demo because we saw a lot of value there for figuring out how much work was actually being done and produced by the team. So this was really helpful. We also did something that's a little bit unconventional, but worked really well for us. We kept on swapping team members to keep them on their toes, so they would actually understand how to learn different skill sets. So we put them in team A, team B, team C, and then we kept on swapping all the time. So this actually worked well, and what it did is that it actually came back out, and we had, in 2 months, we really pretty much transformed this organization from 200 plus developers into a nice large-scale Agile organization. We also made sure that everybody was certified only at the program level because there was no value in getting everybody else certified. Cost saving, time saving, we felt that was beneficial. We did improve the productivity, so we made sure everybody was 100% utilized on those teams, and that really helped us get our product out the door a lot faster. And then the last thing we did, I'm really proud of that one, it was a key enabler. So it really, we started, I know you're not supposed to do that, but we started to compare different teams against each other with respect to velocity. That worked out well. A lot of people actually felt the pressure and they started to produce a lot more. But I can tell you today that we did finish this transformation. All right. That is not what we did. And I am worried that so some of you taking pictures, and I was like, please do not post that and say, this is what Motorola did. We did not do this. Yes, absolutely. There you go. So this is, again, not what we did. We started to look at the transformation, and we followed a lot of the principles that you heard this morning from Ari, from Michal, and other speakers. So I'm not going to go into all the details about how we do this transformation, how we're working toward it. I say, when I looked at this transformation, I say something is a little bit missing, because throughout all the transformation I've done, I always saw very much the same pattern when it comes to who is driving this transformation. Have you ever seen this before? Every time I join a transformation, we get this. Everybody's happy. We get on the scaled Agile tollway. We are going. We got everything ready, 4 lanes, no traffic. We keep on going. And then we hit this tollway part where, oh, now there's a cost to something. And the first instinct that people have is, let's just bail. Just take the next road out, which is back to our scenic waterfall, like the waterfall model, obviously. So this is what I tend to see. And it comes down to the end, when you do those Agile transformation, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of people. Everybody wants to put in their feedback. Everybody has a different perspective on things. It's all great. But there is a lot of chaos, again, into all of this. So when I came in, I say, well, after a while, it's starting to look like some of the other transformation, and we're missing something. And this something, to me, is really, what if we had a product owner for that transformation? It might not sound novel, but a lot of transformation I went through, we didn't have someone dedicated as a product owner to do this work. And what this does, in my opinion, is that it starts to set the accountability and also focus on what do we need to deliver at what time. So this part about being responsible, accountable, focus, setting WIP limits. We heard all about this morning from Ari. We also heard that from Michal from his lessons learned for the safe transformation. If you have a product owner who is responsible for this transformation and drives it like a product, I believe that we can get rid of a lot of those constraints that we see, and most often start to get away from that. Let's take the next road out as soon as we can because we feel things are not working. So in the spirit of superheroes, I don't consider those product owner transformation people superheroes, but I wanted to point out that there are different characteristics. And here, for those of you who don't know, this is which character? Can somebody tell me? The Witcher. I got a whole education about this because I was going to put another character, another Polish well-known character, and I would say that would be too much controversial. So I let it out. It was a white eagle, for those of you who may have known about it. And I put out Daredevil, only because those are just characters that are out there kind of on their own, trying to fight to make sure that things are being built and done the proper way. So Daredevil is actually my corporate avatar, just because I feel like sometimes I associate with him a little bit more. I'm often called the Agile lawyer because I go back and I start to recite everything from Agile when things are not going right. But then, like everybody else, sometimes we need to get things done. So I go in the back alley and make things happen for the transformations. So this is really Part of this presentation is going back and saying, you'll see having a product owner for this transformation is not different than a product owner for any other product, and here you could drive this one as a product. So TX is not from Motorola Transmit Control Protocol. This is just transformation. It was easier for me to put this acronym. So if you look at a product owner or a transformation product owner, there's really not much differences. They both have the same, they do have a product, a vision, and a roadmap, and I'll go through some of those in different slides. But 10,000-foot view, you're really building enablers as a product owner for the transformation. Enablers for the teams to be able to achieve your vision. And your vision and your roadmap will be a little bit different depending on the maturity of your teams, the maturity of your transformation or at this point in time. They own and also manage a product backlog. I want to point out again, it is a full-time job. It is not something where you can just say, I'll take this as a role and spend some time on the side to do it. Driving those transformation with actually making sure that you look at what needs to be deployed, when it needs to be deployed, who needs to be involved, how do you measure the value, what value are you providing, et cetera, becomes a full-time job. We set the priority, we define the acceptance criteria, but more importantly, and that goes back to one of the rationales, is to be accountable. So that person is the one accountable for the outcome of the transformation. It's not a glamorous job because there's a lot of things to do, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. 70% of the transformation fail. That means 70% of the time you're probably not going to succeed, or at least get close to it. There's also this same paradigm for, again, those 4 items that I listed out are the same one that you will see for product owner. You open up any sites, research anything, and say, what is a characteristic product owner? You will see at least 3 or 4 of those bullets there. And to me, they were the highest one that resonated with really having a transformation product owner. So the business acumen, communication, and availability is very important at that point from also the transformational product owner. So you need to understand what the transformation is and adapt to it. It's moving fast. There is a lot of changes again. The changes are hitting from everywhere and every places. And I'll go into a little bit details into some of the other slides. But you need someone who has understanding of what your product is, what your department is redoing, what this program is redoing, understand it at its core, and also understand a lot of different aspects of software development lifecycle. It is not just about this is how we're going to do it at a program level. This is not just about, oh, go ahead and decompose your requirement this way. There's a lot more involved. The coaching part, direction, and support to the team has to be there. So this is part of the communication and availability. A lot of time, that person will have to go and do a lot of workshop. They will have to convince a lot of leadership. They'll have to convince stakeholders, do presentation in front of different crowds to talk about what we are doing. So communication is really important there too. Availability, I'll touch on that. Same thing as a regular product owner. It's got to be available, right? It's not a good thing where you have question about the product that you need to work on or a story, and that product owner is gone, right? And it just comes back the day of the delivery. There are product owners that do that, and they don't last too long. So you have to be there to be able to support those teams. The only thing that I found that is really different for a transformation product owner is the dedicated Scrum team. You do not have a dedicated Scrum team. So you will have a Scrumish team, and I'll touch on that soon, but there is no pool of teams where you can have to tap into that will come and do and help you do some of the work that is needed for the transformation. And that's okay, because I'll go through and explain some of the different models that we've used and are moving towards to help with that. So vision, product, and roadmap. I'm going to decompose a little bit for those points together. If the little bees are bothering you, that's normal. It's intended to be there. It's actually Agile swarming spirit. There will be a lot of bees buzzing around, a lot of work to be done. And as a product owner, you will have to also start to manage those bees as well. Again, a lot of feedback, a lot of people want to bring in their information to this transformation. You have to start to be able to filter things out. But as a product owner, you're accountable again for the outcome of the team. You also have a vision and a product and a roadmap. So on the top, I have my vision for our particular transformation. Yours may be different. We have this concept of we just want to enable customer-centric features to be out the door in the shortest delay. That sounds pretty much like most of what everybody else wants to do. No different for from my perspective. So a transformation product owner will want to enable those teams to get to this vision. We have the product, which is really, at the end of the day, for us, are enablers. So what we're building are enablers to give back to the development teams and the other teams that are part of the transformation, a mean to actually reach their goal, which is to be able to deliver those features in the shortest delay. As part of our roadmap, there's feature teams that we are building. There's also the concept of the continuous integration, continuous delivery to get to continuous deployment. Those concepts may look very simple, but once you're actually starting to get into it, there's quite a bit of work to do. Building feature teams requires a lot of knowledge about what product you're building. It requires a lot of knowledge about where you're going to be going with your product. It also needs you to know how you're building your product, the technologies, the people, skill sets, etc. needs to be part of this. You also need to make difficult decisions. I'm not making those. But you need to make those difficult decisions in terms of swapping people, perhaps sometimes changing people and saying this is not the feature team composition we're looking for. So you have to be able to have that view of how you want to do this work and carry it forward. Continuous deployment is really, for us, the ultimate goal, where we want to be able to have a feature team take a feature, push it out at any point, anytime when they're done, out into a production environment. Simple concepts again, but when you have to build roadmaps for this and see where you want to go as a transformation product owner, you need to build all those enablers. And this is where you can come in and have a different backlog and different perspective on how you want to build those. The part about the transformation, and on that piece there, I will let you take a look just on this very nice picture that I saw recently, and when I showed it to Michal, he really liked it as well, because it paints a picture. And it also, to me, gives a rationale and reasoning for why we need a product owner as well. When you do your transformation, there's so much going on into your roadmap. There's so many items that you have to work on, so many things that need to be addressed. You start, we're climbing this mountain, we are scaling this, I would call it Agile mountain at this point, where we keep going up. A lot of time, we feel like we're almost there. We get there, we say, yes, it's almost there. And then we look at the big picture. Because my management is here, I had to make sure that I would not be putting anything, but you guys can guess what this means at this point. This is very common. And by that, I mean, your roadmap does not need to have every single steps and every single things that need to be done. Same thing as your backlog. If I were to show, and this is not in a spirit of not being transparent, this is in a spirit as a product owner for transformation, to gauge when things need to be deployed, to make sure that we give enough, I would say, courage, confidence, boost to the teams to continue the transformation. We talked about the WIP limit earlier. This is the same thing here. As a transformation product owner, managing that WIP limit is very important. If you look at a backlog or all the tasks that you would write out that needs to be done for your entire transformation, it's humongous. Having someone look at it for a holistic perspective and be able to say, this is when I need to change, this is when is the right time to introduce it, is where you manage that WIP limit. Make your small incremental, and again, relentlessly, same thing. You want to really have someone that can look at it and figure out part of this transformation, where are the gains? Let's make small gains, not quick wins, but things we can quickly get feedback, deploy, try again. If you have everybody on their own doing this work, it makes it very difficult to figure out where are the gains. It makes it difficult to see where do we pivot next. What is the next item I need to tackle? Give team support, again, as a transformation product owner, so they don't get discouraged. Because once they see the amount of work that needs to be done, we get very quickly to this moment. And now we take off to the waterfall scenic byway and start to go down that path. Take the ownership of the impediment is also, in my perspective, a really big responsibility for the product owners. You have so many teams, so many moving parts that are involved in a transformation that there's an impediment somewhere. Well, it's not mine. I don't see it. I'm busy with my stuff. This is what happens a lot with different teams. Rightfully so. If you have someone who can see any impediment that coming down related to the transformation, you can go ahead and tackle it, because it is your role and responsibility at this point. Help those teams remove those impediments from the perspective of scaling. Our team is this one. So I mentioned before, we don't have a team, so I put it down as a Scrumish team, because this is really what works for us today, and it naturally formed itself. We didn't go out there and say, let's require and hire those people to make this team. When we all came into this transformation, a group of us started to gravitate toward each other, and these are the roles of the people that were part of that team. Now, this team, I can say with a lot of confidence, actually works very much like a feature team. Anyone, for our perspective, that is in that team can really tackle any of the problems that are coming in. So I feel very confident that our Chief Scrum Master can come in and handle a problem related to metrics that I'm supposed to be looking at, because I'm tired of now working on a release management issue. You notice that we do have the program manager. Don't hate them, they're wonderful people. Here it made sense for us to have him as part of our team, because he has a holistic view and accountability for the program. Best person to still have in your team to make sure that changes get pushed as well to the responsible teams. Agile coach and consultant, I just want to make a quick comment about this. Treat them as if they're coming into your team to give you actual feedback to your product, not as telling you how the product needs to be made. So this is something, so slightly different perspective here. I'll touch on the tools and metrics lead in another slide briefly, but at the end of the day, we're really made up of a team with cross-functional skills. Everybody has scaled Agile experience, everybody has tactical experience with the tooling. If you attended Mashak's presentation, it was really good talking about some of the tooling for your scale transformation. Strong software development lifecycle experience, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm showing here at the end of the day is that the people on that team have solid experience, either in software development lifecycle or with transformation or with Agile knowledge, but they are not, I would say, inexperienced people by any means. So for our team, we still don't know what we're going to call them. I hope you're all familiar with this movie, The Hangover, so I don't have to give you a description what it is, but pretty much, long story short, it starts with, we have a great plan, and quickly it turns out to be hell for a long time, but at the end, it's a happy story. So we could associate with that, or we don't know if we're going to associate with the live, die, repeat one, where this person tries every day to do something in their life to get to an end point, and every increment, they die and they start again. But the good point is that they're learning from it. And there's a happy ending as well, relatively speaking. So either one of them would suit us. We still don't know where we're going. This is really, to me, if there's one slide that you should take away, this is time for pictures. This is really the slide I would say to take away, because I made it. And no, I did not have a help from CX folks or anything. I'm very proud of it. I did have some coaches help me, to clean it up. But at the end of the day, what I'm showing you is a couple of things. One is at the core of all of this is really the transformation team. They are not the command and control center. Look at them more as the air traffic controller, right? Planes could be related to teams. They have autonomy to decide, fly, where they're going, prepare the plane, etc. Air traffic controller are there to guide them and say, this is where you're going, but also put some guardrail standards, etc. So we have a backlog. This backlog is composed of many different artifacts. For us, it's metrics, system, process, CI/CD. This is what we really look at and take on. What we do with those is that we decompose them into a different set of, obviously, stories that we actually work on. And at any point in time, any team is more than welcome to give us more stories and more epics that we need to start working on. And we break them down. We are not there to, we do decentralize the work and some of the decision making. We only take accountability for the one that has economies of scale and spread across all the different areas and teams. One thing I want to make clear, when you scale, it's not free for all, because you have to have certain set of standards. You have to make sure that everybody operates more or less in the same way. So a quick example would be if you have a feature team working on a piece of code and using, let's say, Polish notation for their variable names, and tomorrow here comes another team and they say, I'm going to capitalize and underscore everything else as the actual naming convention for my variables. it will throw a wrench into this machine and in terms of making sure things flow easily. So we are setting up standards and more direction and processes that are still lightweight, but for the entire, I would say, scope of the whole transformation. Once we consume those, the team either does it, and if we can do most of them, we will do it. And again, most of those people in that Scrummish team are allocated to do this work. But one key point is that it's bidirectional. You have all those other teams, and I would say areas that are giving us backlog items, but we are also giving them backlog items. And by that, I mean, we may have a change in how we were going to do metrics, because we are looking at a different way of measuring, let's say, how much value do we bring to the organization. At this point, we will come up and start looking at what is a better way to do it. We do a lot of the groundwork, but at the end of the day, we'll have to go back to the team and say, because of this, there's a change now in how we're doing a particular, let's say, measuring on the boards, a different state that might be needed at this point. So we will go back to the team. Same for CI/CD. We are looking and say we can enable you with a particular set of tooling and platform. We'll work on that. We'll take the groundwork out of it. And then as a product, what we give them back is, here is a platform and the tooling that you can use. Now you need to go ahead and make sure that you're doing continuous integration. So this is something else that we will give them as a backlog item to work on. Am I comfortable to make sure that they get value from us? They are accountable to also show me that they are bringing value back in terms of taking care of those backlog items. So it's really a true bidirectional relationship. This is why we have the execute, inspect, and adapt cycle, which is really helpful for the way we're doing this work. WIP limit, very important again. We are trying to set the WIP limit to say when is the right time to deploy something to these actually teams, and that will bring the most value rather than just sending out, here's all the stuff that you need to do. So we keep this backlog, we figure out what point is the right time to introduce a change. And we also have a view on the program level, because we know when we're doing some piece of work. So I would not introduce major drastic changes when we have a major feature going out the door, for example. Those are things that we look at. And the sprint capacity allocation, we made a decision to allocate between 15 to 20% to the teams to say, you have to do this work, because this work is required for scaling. It is not because we feel like it's fun, it is a necessity. So we go back and say 20% allocation for this type of work for the transformation of our digital transformation program. I'll skim through this one just for the sake of time. These are really a couple of pillars for a transformation product owner that I think are key. One is accountability. You are now responsible to make sure that what you are bringing as value, what you are actually deploying, and giving the teams to work on is a cost to them. So now as a product owner, I'm going to make sure that how much capacity do I have from each team, and is there really value in doing any of that work today or even later for what we need now? And this really gives me that accountability as a transformation product owner. You also, as part of accountability, will, that what I call hold the line. And the other one is the availability. But hold the line, you heard it in a slightly different way. It's play by the rules. It is very easy from different stakeholders to come in and say, we want to do this, and I know you do this in Agile, but we don't want to do it, we want to do that. As a transformation product owner, you're the front-facing person to actually go back and then hold that line and say, no, this is what we've decided to do. We are moving forward for the time being. It's not like you don't want to change, but at this point, it's too easy sometimes to just go in another direction, while you at least can go ahead and make sure that you are doing some kind of enforcement. It gives you credibility towards the team as well. There's nothing worse than trying a transformation and you tell the teams, this is how we're going to play by the rules, this is what we're going to do, and then suddenly someone keeps on changing the rules. They can go back to someone now, that transformation product owner, and say, I have a problem. This is what's happening. And you can address it as a backlog item and move forward. Transparency, you as a product owner now are required to be very transparent, right? In the spirit of Agile, I'm not going to show everyone, this is what I'm doing. So here's my metrics, here's my backlog, here's when we're going to push things out. And I need 20% of capacity from all the teams to do this. Sometimes it's painful, you have to go through a few battles, but doing that takes a lot of the work out of the development team for them to focus on what's needed. You need to communicate quite a bit. That's part of the work to let people know where you're going and what you're doing. In a transformation, so many things are happening. The frustration becomes with the teams, the stakeholder, the leadership, what's going on, where is this going? Because everyone has a different opinion. So the product owner will now have a very clear view about here's the roadmap, here's the direction we're going, and the accountability. Enablement, again, you need to have this, I call it a quality because it's very hard to give out control. And if you're able to really trust the teams now and the other players in this transformation to do the work and help you through it, it will actually be a big gain. Now, it comes back with a lot of transparency as well, but enabling the team to do that work and trusting that other key players in your transformation will be doing the right thing is a big win as well. And we'll see that because there's a lot of work for you to do. So as a transformation product owner, this is how I started. These are real numbers that I calculated in terms of where was I spending my time, and all the rest doesn't mean I'm just twiddling and not doing anything. It's all the rest of the work I need to do. At the end of the day, I started to realize that most of my time was spent in coaching and managing the product backlog. And by that, I mean you are bombarded with questions, impediments. We don't know how to do this. We don't know how that. How do we do this? How do we do that? There's a problem here. There's a problem there. And sometimes it could be things that come down and say, our SIT environment is not moving fast enough. The SIT guys are not doing anything. Can you help? Our stuff are stuck. It goes back to our chief Scrum Master or to a Scrum Master to a degree, but then you realize it's a process issue. Then you realize it might be a tooling issue. Then you realize many other things. You have this holistic view of all those different phases in development lifecycle, and you can start to make the right tactical decision. But my point is, you need to start to delegate. And the delegation comes down to this Scrumish transformation team. Everybody else in there is accountable. We all have the same goal. We pass on the different responsibilities at different moments. The teams are also very willing and responsible for making those changes, and you can enable them to do that as well. But the point is, it is a full-time job, and it requires quite a bit of time. Second last slide, I'm almost done. I know you guys are getting patient. Here are a couple of the assets I see as a transformation product owner that you can use. I'll go clockwise, I'll go with autonomy, and I'm saying this one because I'm going back and say, you have decision-making to a degree. And I say to a degree because you can't, make just rash decisions that don't align with the actual goals of your transformation or program. But at least you have some decision making about, say, when do I want to deploy which part of my backlog or which part of my product? And that is really helpful and key. And I put down true leadership support, not because my leadership kind of flew here just to watch me speak, because I didn't know they would do that, which they didn't come here for that. But it is very important. If your leadership supports this transformation and understands it and is okay with success, failures, as long as you're being reasonable, you will get this autonomy. And that autonomy to me is a key part as a product owner that you should have and you will have at some point. That enables a person to go and make those decisions about when do we deploy, which process changes, which tooling, how do we reform the team, at what point in time. This piece is really key. Without that, I don't think you should even start at that point. Experiment is the other same part, as part of the autonomy. Be open to the experimentation within reason again. We are a business, we need to actually obviously make profit, so I wouldn't make rash decision, but the fact that you can start experimenting and have teams that are willing to experiment is a big gain. Proven and versatile tool ecosystem. So this team, those people, be very good friend with them. They will enable you to do a lot of things and move very fast. This is a team that I would say in Motorola, we have a team that helps us with all of this tooling ecosystem. You need to make changes, you need to make them quick. You want to have people that know what they're doing, that have the experience with the tooling, that have the experience with the process. They can enable you very quickly to make your changes. So you want to experiment, they're there to help you. You try out, didn't work, try again. But it's not here where I have a process where I need to submit a request to do all this work forever, et cetera, et cetera. If you notice, one member of this team is part of the Scrumish team. okay, of the transformation Scrumish team. Agility is really a key point with your tooling here. The metrics, for me, is pretty much, although my management keeps asking me, say, I want to see metrics, I want to see metrics, they want to see the metrics that works for them. But I have metrics that we're starting to build. I like to use them particularly for transformation, control chart, and the lead cycle time chart. So the control chart really is a nice chart to use. It's complicated to understand and read and really use effectively. But take a look at them. They're quite useful as a transformational product owner. But key point here is that you want to measure what you're doing. So I'm accountable for making sure that if I push out a change and say, we are now going to go and set up this kind of environment, or we're changing this process of setting up these standards, I want to make sure I can go back and show the stakeholders, the teams, the leadership, everybody who's part of the transformation and impacted by it, that it has made an improvement and there's value. And if there's not, then at least I know it was the wrong decision and we can pivot somewhere else. Experienced Agile coaches and Scrum Masters, quick feedback. That is, to me, paramount, and that is what I like to use from Agile coaches as well as the Scrum Masters. We plan to do this. What do you think? They can quickly come and tell you back, bad idea. This team is not going to handle this right now because they have visibility on other things. I also look at the Scrum Masters as the ambassadors for the changes that we're making. So they have definitely big input into what we're doing. We talk with them. At some point when we come back and say, let's go ahead and make that change. We can't always train 200 plus developers. We look back at some of the Scrum Masters to handle that and work with us to be the ambassadors for the transformation. The whale, we all know, actually, Socrates had this great quote, which is pretty much, you can read it. But for me, I look back and say, if I have willing early adopters and we have teams that I say, sure, we want to really try this, use them right away. The minute you can show the value with that one team, the rest follows. And that's what we've been doing. So I find a team that's really big on doing CI/CD, and they want to try to use, let's say, containerize everything. Let's go with it. We take them on. We'll work with you right now. We enable them. We make the changes. We go back. We measure, and we say, look, teams, they are doing it. What are you guys thinking? And easy enough, people follow when it's the right decision. The last one that will make every Scrum Master, Agile coaches, everybody else very happy is a retrospective. So I do a lot of what is called, I would consider Gamba walk when I'm out in the Chicago office, because it's where I'm based. Out in Krakow, I don't come here often, but I do get enough feedback from a lot of people because the folks in Krakow are very vocal, and thank you for that. You know who you are in the room. But at this point with the retrospective, I am able to capture those as backlog item. So every Scrum Master sends me their retrospective from the team level. We do them at a PI level, also when we do PI-like planning. By the way, we're not using a framework. So we have a hybrid between SAFe and LESS, and we are using what works for us. But we do today still some of the PI. And I get the retros also from those. I consume it, I look at it, and start opening backlog items to what I'm seeing as a pattern across the different teams and say, this is definitely something we should be working on now because it is coming up as a problem. And I know that in a month, we're trying to deploy yet another standard, and we're also going, let's say, to our e-commerce platform to go headless with architecture. All of this I have visibility to, I understand how it's going to impact. So retrospective, very good way for you to actually use it as a highway for inspect and adapt in terms of what's working, what's not working, and then create backlog items out of that. It also makes the team know that you're going to do something about what is going on. All right, that's another big frustration point is everybody's complaining about everything, but no one is doing anything because no one is accountable. At the end of the day, there's a lot of people in a transformation. If you put a product owner in there, he's accountable again to make sure that that transformation is successful. He's accountable to make sure that the product that goes out the door is good with quality. So they will take the product backlog item from their customers, which is the teams as well. And the last quote, this is last slide, sorry for the long time, but I stole this shamelessly from an Agile coach who wrote it in 2 minutes after I was trying to explain my perspective on the entire goal and role of a transformation product owner. I was getting too complex. He just tried it out. 5 minutes. All I did, I struck through the actually transformation because I wanted to point out to you the picture that there's no difference. If you read out what a transformation product owner versus a regular product owner do, this is it. So.
Any questions for Johan?
Oh no, that was the best part about being the last presentation.
That is kind of the operational question, because you said you have all the retrospective from the Scrum teams. Mm-hmm. How many retrospective is it?
So we have close to 8 teams. We're building up on 10 teams now, so we get about 10 retrospective.
10, okay. Mm-hmm. And the second question is, because you said that you are working as a product owner. I work in Santander Bank, and from my perspective, it's really hard to encourage people to talk with the product owners instead of talking with the directors, okay? Because the huge organization understand directors and managers, etc. And product owner is the kind of the leader. So how it looks like in your case, that you are not a director, you are a product owner?
Do you hear that, Matt? I'm not a director. That's the point.
Yeah.
No, so I just want to make sure I understand your question right. In your case for Santander, most people are more comfortable going to the product owner rather than the leadership. And to me, that's the whole point too here. It's the same thing. As a transformation product owner, which by the way, I coined myself that after I started to see what is going on into the organization. It is easier for the teams, yes, to come to me and say, this is not working. And one of the reasons is because first, there's a credibility of I'm going to do something about it because I have some accountability on this. 2, they see things most of the time happening. There's still a huge backlog. But by doing this, by being transparent, by being credible, having the accountability, they know now they can come to you. And sometimes it is really a pain because you have people constantly coming. But they will see that as you being able to make a change. And this is where people come in. Now, it's not that I would say that for our perspective, they're not comfortable talking to our leadership. I think it is that they realize he understands the problem that we're facing right now because they see one person who is really taking ownership of the transformation and say that person is going to make the change. So I'm going to go to them and gravitate. Not that the leadership is not going to make a change, but there's sometimes you have to have an understanding. It goes back to the point I made earlier. You need to know your product. You need to know how to do software development lifecycle. And by that, I mean, you need to understand how to do requirements management all the way down to how do I code. You have to know all of this. You have to know how to do, let's say today, CI/CD is really the things to do. So when they come to a problem about that may look small, I understand that this has a huge impact on, let's say, our CI/CD outcome, for example. And that's what makes it easier for them to come to someone that they say can relate, but also I think key point is has accountability to make sure that something gets done. And perhaps one of the reasons, I guess I mentioned earlier, there is a debate, I believe, tomorrow. And that might be some of the conversation in that debate. So I encourage you to come and take a look because in my perspective, some of the transformation fail because, again, there is no one person accountable and takes the ownership of the transformation. Any other questions? You two gentlemen, no questions? Yes. You remember we have a party to go to after.
Yeah, I do. So, first of all, I really liked how you present about the ownership and the necessity of having a transformation product owner. But how could you describe your product as a product owner? Because mainly you were speaking from IT perspective, like enabling development teams to actually ship the increments faster and faster and faster and faster.
Yeah. So good question. So for me, I have a background in product engineering, and then I moved to IT. This works right now in a smaller scale. So again, 200 plus, developers for the way we are working. I can see where if we're going back to the old transformation I did in product engineering part where Michal talked about, we have 6,000 plus developers. It's a whole different concept. The product for me is really again, going back to enabling those teams to do the actual goal that we're looking for, which is continuous deployment. It's that simple from my perspective. So that means today, I need to make sure that we have a certain set of standards, because we have feature teams going out the door. So again, team A and team B are going to work on the same code base. How am I going to make sure that they can do that effectively and really go ahead and deploy the code without any issue? I have to make sure the Git branching scheme is working fine. I got to make sure they're doing automation testing. I got to make sure that we're using the same set of tooling again to do this work, because they can't all be learning 20 different tools on top of 20 different technology, et cetera. So that's, for me, the product is really the standards, the process, the tooling, and some of the technology. Feature teams, my management is more in tune with that. I am definitely involved in it, but that's another part. We look at the composition of the feature teams. Same thing here.
So mainly you are covering the productivity domain of the teams and the quality domain of the teams, right?
So it's not just productivity and quality, because that way to me has a bad connotation there. It's more of a software development lifecycle. So enabling and helping them, for example, to say, this is how you break down your requirements, and this is how we're going to go and use epic stories and initiatives. And here's how you can be a lot more, crisp with how you're writing stories and why it makes a big difference. That's one example. Another one could be, we are going to be setting up new security standards. They don't really need to, they are so busy also working on other things. So what I will do, and I'll go back and say, okay, here are the security standards we need to set, because we need to meet all those requirements. It could be considered as quality, but to some degree, looking at which tooling makes them more efficient is part of that too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Last chance to ask a question. Okay, so thank you very much, Johan, and thank you for being here with us.